Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to St Peter Mancroft Church, whether you're here in church or watching online. If you are in church, please carry on with your visit. This is part of our weekly series of reflections here, part of something that happens at 1 o'clock every weekday here. My name's Catherine Waddams. I'm a lay minister here at St Peter Mancroft. And today I want to make a rather seasonal reflection, I think, on lilies of the valley and Christian aid. So 54 years ago today, I returned from my Saturday morning shopping in Leicester to receive one of those rather difficult phone calls that you don't forget. Catherine, said a hesitant voice, I'm not sure how to say this. My father had died suddenly at the age of 60. We set off for Canterbury to be with my mother, and the house there soon was filled with a wonderful and distinctive scent. Canterbury has the same sort of geology as here, lots of flint buildings too, to prove it. And on hearing the news of my father's death, neighbours had each cut what was growing in their own gardens in the precincts in mid-May, lilies of the valley. I tried for 50 years without success to grow these in Leicester and then in Norwich, and it wasn't till the last few years that I have succeeded and have my own supply, and here they are to prove it, a wonderful memory of my father. Of course, there were a lot of decisions to be made for his funeral and other arrangements, but one was very easy. We had no doubt about which charity should benefit from any donations in his memory. It was then, as it is now, Christian Aid Week. He was a strong supporter, and he'd been directly involved in setting it up after the Second World War. Originally, it was to help European refugees, and he had spent some time in Germany in 1946, liaising with German churches. This established Christian Aid's continuing pattern of partnership. It equips and enables partner churches to meet the needs of their people. This partnership remains a fundamental aspect of Christian Aid's philosophy, and of course means that the contributors to Christian Aid and the organisation itself are willingly giving control to the people who are most likely to know how best to spend it in their own interests. I think in a way that was a model for how my father brought us up, encouraging us to make our own decisions and be ambitious about them, and it stood me in good stead. 13 years after my father's death, Christian Aid helped to fund my own visit abroad, this time to Tanzania, where I assessed the British government's aid programme on behalf of a group called the Independent Group on British Aid. This was spearheaded by Oxfam and Christian Aid and took up that focus of Christian Aid on enabling others, challenging the UK government in the 1980s to target international aid to helping people to help themselves, something we've become familiar with in the intervening years. While the immediate emotional response to a humanitarian disaster like a failed harvest may be to send lots of food and grain, this can result in the collapse of local markets and undermine incentives to plant for future years, ruining the local agricultural infrastructure. The aid I was assessing was rather different. It was a very expensive 1,000-kilometre asphalt road joining the capital, Dar es Salaam, in the east, to Songea in the southwest, to provide access for goods and people all year round. The previous dirt road had been unpassable during the rainy season, which lasts at least 3 months, limiting export of crops, import of materials, and movement of people. I was struck by how Tanzanians in towns and cities were still deeply rooted in their own agricultural base. Poverty was a huge challenge, and if the modern economy got too desperate and jobs and income were lost, most people could return back to their villages, where their families still practiced subsistence agriculture. Destitution was common, but rarely involved complete starvation. Using Christian Aid's network of partners, I visited some headquarters in Dar es Salaam, talked to representatives of Western governments who were funding various projects, and heard how difficult it is to maintain hospitals and other shiny new capital projects when it was difficult to import medicines and other necessary supplies to keep them running. Julius Nyerere was just coming to the end of 24 years, leading Tanzania to be a confident nation under his socialist philosophy. And the country was struggling to earn enough foreign currency to afford oil and petrol imports. Many shop shelves were empty because of shortages. I was rather embarrassed to find great admiration for our then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and a belief that under a more market-based system, there would be plenty of things to buy. That view was probably right, but I tried to explain that rather than the egalitarian system which they were used to, very few people would actually be able to afford these. It's always easier, isn't it, to see the benefits of the system we aren't experiencing. The grass is always greener on the other side of the political fence. As for this 1,000-kilometre road itself, it looked beautifully new still, partly because it wasn't used very much, and provided a much more comfortable ride than its unpaved alternatives, whether that was by bus or, when these inevitably broke down, in the back of an open truck. It had made very little difference to most people's lives. There was no sign of new villages and trading places springing up along its length as had been hoped. People couldn't get reliable supplies of petrol or anything else, so largely ignored the road. My conclusion, which I published in a little booklet, Britain and Tanzania, The Search for Real Aid, concluded that British aid, this piece of British aid, had at least done little harm, unlike some of the aid which we talked about and could be disruptive. But neither did it do much to further Christian Aid's purpose, to create a world where everyone can live a full life, free from poverty, echoing Jesus' own declaration that he had come to bring life in all its fullness. At our Christian Aid service at our lunch on Sunday, we heard about one of Christian Aid's current partners, Beacon of Hope, which helps people in Nairobi, Kenya, which of course is Tanzania's neighbour. The rural family subsistence safety net, which I'd observed 40 years ago, has broken down with climate change affecting crop reliability and increased migration to the cities. But we heard of Christian Aid's work and how Frida participates in a local Beacon of Hope project, which helps urban dwellers grow their own food in tiny areas in the city, with enough left over to sell for some cash. So Frida herself can now support her own family and afford some education for them. For me, there's a personal aspect to giving a bit extra to Christian Aid each May, as a way both of looking back, remembering my father and his particular contribution to the founding of Christian Aid, but much more importantly, looking forward to the hope which Christian Aid continues to offer to people facing hardship and destitution. And my lilies of the valley, now well established, indeed verging on the rampant, they're currently trying to take over the rhubarb, remain another fragrant reminder of past blessings. I hope that you too have an opportunity to remember with gratitude people who you have loved and who have shaped your own life. I wish you every blessing for the remainder of this rather blustery, showery spring day. Thank you for listening.